local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Thank you for joining us. Our Election 2010 special hour-long series of candidate interviews continue today to help you decide how to spend your vote. In this segment, we'll be talking to Rick Catlin and Brian Berger. They're the Republican candidates running for the two seats up for grabs on the New Hanover County Commission. Then we'll move to the other side of the aisle with their Democrat counterparts, Deborah Butler and Sid Causey, for the second half of our segment. But thank you both, Brian and Rick, for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
We don't want to spend too much time on this, but let's just kick off what you both do in real life, Brian.
Well, I have a small business, and my background has been in business, both small and large.
What kind of business?
Marketing primarily, but jack of all trades.
And Rick?
Well, I'm an environmental engineer, and I own Catlin Engineers and Scientists, and we are headquartered here in Wilmington.
All right, so let's get an overview of how you think the county is being run right now, Rick.
Well, you know, we had a Star News question there that asked us to give a grade A through F for how they've done. I think that
What'd you give?
Well, people are still losing their jobs, they're still losing their homes, and they're still losing their dreams. And I think to raise taxes in that environment, it warrants a failing grade, but you have to put everything into context. I think that leaders across the country have been slow to recognize the magnitude and the duration of this great recession that we're in. So in lieu of criticism, I think that some good business leadership is the most constructive solution.
Can you really tag the state of the economy onto the county?
Well, it's how you respond to it. If you respond by raising taxes, you know, that's one measure.
Your take on it, Brian?
Well, I certainly would agree with Rick that while the economic problems we're seeing are global in scale, there have also been a number of things done here in New Hanover County that are not helping the situation locally, especially with regards to job creation and economic growth. There are things New Hanover County can and should be doing, but haven't been doing. And there are some decisions that have been made here locally which are hurting the local economy. Certainly raising taxation now when so many people are struggling.
When you say raising taxes, you're talking about that the recent quarter cent.
Well, the sales tax hike certainly.
You would have voted against that?
But
you would have?
We've
Against it, yes.
You would have.
We've also seen other tax increases, utility rate hikes twice already this year, and the burden on
we'll
families
get to the
and
Cape Fear
retirees
Public
is
Utility
really
Authority.
growing.
We're going to talk about that. All right, so if you don't raise taxes or find revenue sources, how do you deal with, would you have bridged the $13 million revenue gap that the county was facing?
Well, that's why it's so important that citizens elect county commissioners who are willing to go through the budget line by line, get their hands dirty, and
are you suggesting that the current commissioners don't do that?
I think some do and some have not.
Have you?
I certainly have, and I'm a
Where would you cut?
Well, there are a number of places in the budget where there is room to cut. There are certain areas of the budget that are losing money right now, such as Early Gardens, where there's the potential to break even or even have something like Early Gardens become a revenue source for the county.
So that's being run poorly, you think?
If you've got commissioners with the business experience who are willing to get involved, get their hands dirty, and work to ensure that taxpayers are not viewed as a piggy bank for every single project a commissioner
No, the money
wants.
that government gets comes from the taxpayers.
But I think Rick and I, we both agree that zero-based budgeting is the way we need to go.
Do you agree that, or how would you have bridged that $13 million gap?
The first thing you've got to recognize is that over the last several decades, we've been in a time of growth, and government grows very easily. It doesn't contract naturally. The way we do budgeting is incremental budgeting. So whatever you spent last year or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you don't worry about that, and you better spend it or you won't get it again, and you argue over what's added to it. Well, somewhere in there, you get a lot of cobwebs, you get a lot of inefficiency, you get a lot of legacy cost that we don't identify. That's what zero-based budgeting does. It takes it down.
Every department starts with zero and has to justify their budget.
And that's an extremely complicated process. It takes a long time. It takes special training, but it's something that's worthwhile every once in a while. And I think now is a good time to do that. If we did that, that would give us the savings I think that we need to balance the budget right now. Along the way, though, we need a quality committee, or we need a continuous improvement committee of business people that would volunteer to take a look at each department and processes and information technology and technology that
and sign off on their budget type thing,
and that could find efficiencies for each department, so that after we do the zero-based budgeting, we could continue to make government more efficient along the way.
Earlier this year, there was a 4-1 vote. Jonathan Barfield, being the lone dissenter, happens to be the only Democrat on the board at the moment. It was a 4-1 vote that the commission voted in support of the controversial immigration law that was passed in Arizona. How would you have voted on that?
I agree, and I...
You agree with that vote?
And I give the county commission praise for having the courage to go ahead and take a stand on illegal immigration, because it's a serious issue, and if the federal government and state government aren't going to deal with it, then we need to do what we can here locally to push them.
Yeah, I think that Arizona was set a great example of states having the right to enforce laws that the federal government doesn't. And, you know, we're allowed to enforce bank robbery crimes, which are federal laws, and so we ought to be able to enforce that. So I think that was a good move on their part.
What's the end result of that? I mean, what did it accomplish?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Well, I think what it accomplishes.
I mean, there's a lot on the county's plate. I'm curious.
When the federal government and Congress is so out of touch with what's going on in the country, and you have community after community passing resolutions like this, it sends a very clear message to Washington, to Raleigh, that we're not going to just sit back and allow you to neglect enforcing our laws.
The reason I ask that is you both advocate zero-based budgeting, which you said is a very arduous process and takes a lot of time and energy, and it takes the commissioners they're not doing that. They're voting on whether they support the Arizona immigration law. So I mean, there's a finite number of things the commission can do and put on their plate. Should that have been a priority? Was I guess my question.
No, our budget should have been the priority, but I don't disagree with what they do.
And I don't think that necessarily took that much time. I don't think passing those resolutions took that much time away from budgeting.
Okay, we'll come back. Our guests are the Republicans running for the 2 seats up for grabs on the New Hanover County Commission, Rick Cadlin and Brian Berger. Stay with us, because in our second half hour, we'll have their Democrat counterparts from the other side of the aisle, Deborah Butler and Sid Causey. But we'll be right back with Brian and Rick after this. Stay with us.